skirt, skirt! Skirt, skirt! Whoa, what was that? That was an electric scooter pulling into a solar-powered docking station at one of the Air Force's bases of the future. Now, I'm from RAF Lakenheath, out in the United Kingdom, and we don't have these there yet. So when airmen PCS there, they don't have a way to quickly and easily get around the base, especially where it's difficult to get a car. That means they can't get to the flight line on the other side of base very quickly, or can't really get to lunch at the commissary very quickly. However, with Scooters AF, we can bring those bases of the future to the Air Force right now and turn all of this around. Scooters are already making a big impact in thousands of cities around the world. The first of these is that they're just simply more efficient and a lot quicker than other modes of transportation. They're 22% faster than bikes, which means that airmen can get where they need to go more quickly. Second of all, they're cheaper. They're 80% cheaper than the daily cost of ownership of a car, which is great for the pocketbook of an airman who already has a tight wallet. Third, they're cool. Airmen love mobility. The airmen coming into the day's Air Force are Gen Zers and millennials who like to have their transportation options available at the click of a button on their phone, and Scooters AF brings that to them. Fourth, they're good for the environment. The 2018 National Defense Strategy charged us to do things in a more environmentally friendly way, and e-scooters are totally carbon neutral. Opportunities for scooter implementation exist at nearly every Air Force base. However, we see a special opportunity at training bases like Lackland and Wright-Patterson Air Force bases, where members TDY quite often, and also at overseas bases, such as where I'm at RAF Lakenheath in the United Kingdom, in Korea, and Japan, where it's really difficult for first-term airmen especially to get a car. The commercial service structure for a scooter service like this is pretty simple. It takes two commercial partners. The first is the scooter service provider themselves. These are the companies that actually bring the scooters to the base and do the maintenance on the scooters. Lime, Spin, Bird, I'm sure you've heard of them. We saw them this morning. The second partner is a company like SwiftMile, an electric docking station. These docking stations are solar powered, which means they're also great for the environment. And they provide a central location for the scooters to be stored so that they're not strewn all over base. We envision three big key partners in this effort. The first are those of you here in this room. We need the support of leadership, center, wing, MAGCOM leadership, to provide that initial infrastructure cost investment. Second, the industry themselves. We need to create an environment where industry really wants to play with us and wants to provide the scooters in a way that they can profit. Third, mission support group squadrons. At the lowest level, we need civil engineering squadrons to be on board to help with the infrastructure installation of the docking stations. We need contracting, force support, and logistics input to create that great relationship with industry. The great thing about this idea is that there's already a buy-in at Edwards Air Force Base. We already have a proof of concept that's in the works right now. They're currently in an acquisition period, setting up a relationship with Spin, which is owned by Ford, and also with that company SwiftMile, which provides the docking station. They envision having 20 to 30 scooters just in the next few months to test this at Edwards. And the great thing is that they're doing it as a $0 lease, which means that they're not paying per scooter, like a lease fee per scooter. They're just paying a baseline maintenance fee, and the companies are making money based on how much usage happens on the base. We envision a mission timeline in 3 phases. The first phase is a 4-month site survey. In this site survey, we would select 4 bases that we could test this on. Ideal bases with varying weather conditions that would give us a good idea for how this would work. We envision about $50,000 to cover those TDY costs. The second phase would be the acquisition period, to purchase that initial infrastructure and install it. And then the third phase next year would be initial deployment to those 4 bases to test out how viable this is in different locations. Our ask then from you today is that for that first $400,000 initial investment to cover the site survey and the infrastructure. And then also time. We need a multifunctional team so that all the right parties are at the table so that we can make an educated analysis of how this is going to work. Wing safety would be important. Logistics, civil engineering, contracting, as we mentioned. in the end then, whether it's a first-term airman in the dorms, an airman at tech school, or an airman like me PCSing overseas, Scooters AF can revolutionize an airman's on-base experience. With Scooters, we can help the environment. With Scooters, we can save airmen money. With Scooters, we can revitalize those communities of the airmen and help them hang out more and do lots more things together. And with Scooters, we can create those bases of the future right now. Thank you. Pending your questions.
Hey, LT, great presentation. Thanks, man. Thanks for putting it together, you know, taking a look for our airmen, everything like that. Great presentation. Why hadn't we already done this? You know, why hadn't we already done it? And I'm sure you've talked with a couple of the vendors, right? I mean, are we doing this for a service to where they take care, they make the money, they do all that, or are we going to have to keep all this upkeep and everything along with the scooters?
So to answer your first question, I think the reason we haven't done it is because there's been a misperception as how it would be implemented, thinking that this would be a lot of work. I think leadership, and myself included, don't like to see scooters strewn all over San Antonio and Austin. That's probably a reason that it hasn't been done yet. However, we would do, to answer your second question, we would do this more as a service so that we wouldn't be doing all of that work. We wouldn't have LRS managing all of the scooters. We wouldn't have force support trying to go collect them all the time.
I mean, a lot of this would be up to the company that comes, right? I mean, we give them a spot, we give them, you know, the plug-in, but they would take care of maintenance and rack maintenance.
Ideally,
and, I
yes,
mean,
sir.
We can incentivize to get them put back on the rack or whatever. I mean, there's ways to do that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So great briefing as well, LT. That was fantastic. I've seen these applied and implemented in places like Washington, D.C. and other large-scale cities. My question, I think, is on the infrastructure side of this. We are somewhat different when you start talking about military installation because we have walls and gates. How do you stop an airman from taking it downtown San Antonio and not being able to use it for another airman on Lackland Air Force Base? With the same thing being said, you have Port San Antonio, which is still part of Lackland. I'm just using that as an example. How many infrastructure nodes are you going to need in order to support a base like Lackland that is so diverse? It has bridges that go over to other sides of the bases. It has Kelly Air Force Base. It has Port San Antonio. Even where you're at, Lakenheath, and until Mildenhall closes, you have two co-located bases right next to each other. How has that infrastructure really been kind of gauged in terms of cost associated with what we need to provide to these airmen?
The biggest infrastructure investment that we would need on the base, besides the docking stations, would be to work with CE to create bike lanes. That would really mitigate the safety risk. Mm-hmm. And then on the other hand, which gets to your question about making sure the airmen don't take them off the base, the industry partners have already figured this out. They geofence downtown San Antonio, for example, so a Texan doesn't take their scooter to Austin or something. So after a certain latitude, longitude, the scooters just won't work. Their wheels will lock. So they can geofence a base just as easily as they geofence a downtown area.
Oh, okay.
Lieutenant Brandt, I have a question. So awesome brief. And it's really cool that you're partnering with Edwards. What do you see as the biggest safety challenge that would help kind of engage the installation commanders that to date are seeing all of the risks, but kind of bypassing the opportunities?
Could you repeat what's the biggest
safety challenge?
Safety challenge, what's the biggest safety challenge?
I'm thinking policy or bureaucracy. What's standing in our way besides that the installation commander embracing it and kind of just offering it?
Yes, ma'am. So the biggest safety challenge is airmen's behavior. Drinking and driving these scooters would be a risk, obviously, and then with the infrastructure not existing and with a lot of bases not having bike lanes, for example, that would create some risk. On the policy side, we have bases like Osan Air Force Base that have already tackled this problem. They've already written an entire memorandum just to control scooter and electric bike safety, just to set up what the requirements are, because at OSAN you can't have a car if you're under the rank of Master Sergeant, and so pretty much everyone on the base has a scooter bike or electric bike. So we could model the safety instructions off of that. AFI 91207 is our transportation AFI. That would also need to be probably edited to involve scooters. I don't think it's a really hard fix though. It's definitely doable, and a base like OSAN has already done it. They've already figured it out. They require wearing of helmets and etc.
So you brought up a great point there, LT. Business model wise, for the companies that we're looking at partnering with, when you take a base like Ramstein, which gets really cold, or even Korea, Osan, and it's pretty dangerous at times, are we going to see a problem during those winter months with utilization and the business model not being acceptable to one of the investors that are looking at coming in and doing that with us?
On the safety issue, scooters and bikes aren't any more dangerous than a car in icy weather. And so on the one hand, I don't think that's as big a risk. With the commercial service partner, they generally build in a weather into their model of the revenue for the revenue stream, because they do operate in cold areas like Boston and New York. So it would just be a conversation we'd have to have with the provider to say, you know, in Korea or in a Maelstrom, you know, we have 6 months of winter. But the great thing about scooters is they are pretty durable. They are able to be used in the winter months. My fiance gets to work every single day on a scooter in the United Kingdom, and it rains for 5 months of the year there. So they are pretty durable, and as long as the infrastructure is there on the base, they're not unsafe. Not that unsafe. Probably safer than bikes, actually.
I like your idea, LT. I think we could bog ourselves down in the safety piece, right? A bike, a scooter, people determine when to ride a bike, they determine when to ride a scooter. I like that OSAN does it. I like that you're working with it at Edwards, and you got your wing commander on board, right? So he's willing to take the risk. I mean, I wouldn't tie it to having to need a bike lane or a sidewalk or whatever. We ride a bike on the road, we jog on the road. You just got to get that right. You know, let's make sure we don't bog yourselves down, but I like your idea.
I have a question for you. Great brief, Lieutenant. And I'm a fan. I ride them out here. There may be a video or two out there somewhere, right? But it's fun. I do it safely. I'll tell you though, the skeptic part in me with this, I wonder why a scooter and not a bicycle? Why not go bicycle? Why not with exercise and things like that as opposed to the scooter? What's your thoughts on that?
Scooters are more attractive to airmen because they're faster. They require less physical exertion, honestly, so that they're not like sweating when they get to work. They don't have to shower. The Marine Corps has tested this out in Southern California at Miramar and Camp Pendleton, partnering with Lime, the Lime bikes, the pedaling bikes, and then also with electric bikes. And they saw an increased usage just with electric bikes because they're basically a more attractive proposition to the airmen.
Cool. Thank you. Great presentation.
Sir.
I'll just say I really like the way that you're targeting the training bases and the airmen, as their first location where they just don't have a vehicle yet, and they may not even have a bicycle. So offering something like that and thinking about them, kudos and hats off to you.
Ooh, good job, LT. Hey, good presentation, good research. Thanks for doing it. I'd open it up before you get off the stage. Take a look at how you can use it on the job too. I mean, some of our flight lines are 2.5 miles long.
Yes, sir.
Right? So, I mean, a maintainer going from a back shop out to his chalk, with a basket on the front with a part, I think you got some possibilities there to help speed the workday, get more out of it versus just the pleasure of at the dorm. Maybe you put them in some of these back shops. I think and especially at Edwards, as large as your flight line area is, right? So
yes,
take
sir.
a look at that when you go back, man. But,
yes, sir.
great idea. Thanks for coming, man.